Hello and welcome to the final video of the TLYC sock challenge. Today we're going to talk about sewing in, blocking and washing. So we're going to start with seaming. So you have your perfect sock, you're finished, and now all you've got to do is sew in your ends. It's not really seaming, it's sewing in ends. So the first thing is, this is kind of personal. Lots of people do this in different ways. This is how I do mine. It's how I find I get the best fit and they hide really well. So the first thing is I actually go in along and around the stitches of my graft. And what this does is it keeps it flat. Some people go down along the side, of course. I keep it flat and you're not adding any bulk to these stitches. So I go in and out of my bumps of my sock, and you're not really adding any volume, adding a little bit obviously because you're adding the threads in between them. But what I find is that this creates no extra bulk, and also over time it kind of felts in. Not that it felts fully because some wools don't felt, but it kind of binds together with the rest of the toe because it sees quite hard wear. I've never had a problem with this myself. If you're very delicate to what you have in your sock, it might feel a little bit funny, but again, I would just encourage you to give it a try. Now at the end, I don't really tie big knots in my knitting. I'll just go in around it, thread it through just a little bit through the tail of that and just pull it out. Then I'll just even it out a little bit. I don't have a scissors with me at the moment, and a neat trick I saw somebody doing recently, and I wish I could credit whoever showed me, is when you're sewing in ends and you don't have a scissors, just tie a knot in the end, and I probably tie two knots, and it tells you that you've already sewn in this end and you can just snip it off. Because I think we all have a thing with knitting whereby sometimes you're going to sew in an end, you won't have a scissors, and then you won't remember that you've sewn it in. So the next thing then is to get rid of the tail. Now the first thing you want to do here is, if you have any kind of funniness or unevenness here, you want to use this tail to hide that as you sew it in. So I'm just going to pop in there. I think I'm pretty happy with that edge. And then what I do here is I sew mine down along the back leg of one of the ribs. Again, this is something I like to do. It works really well for me. I've been knitting socks now for a long time and I haven't lost any ends. So just sewing in along the end of it here. So the only thing you're really trying to do is avoid things unraveling, hiding the end and just making it comfortable to wear as well. So you're trying not to add any bulk to your seam, to your sewing in lines. And I find that this works really well. You can't see it at the front because it's hidden by the ridge. And again, you will see people doing this in lots of different ways. And you may even have, if you've been knitting a long time and just happens to be your first time making a sock, um, you'll have a way of sewing in your ends that you like. Then again, I'll just tie my knot in this again. I love this. So, it's only in the last few months I picked this up, and I just think it's the best thing. And that's really it. There is one little thing I do want to show you about all kinds of seaming, particularly with socks. And it's where you might accidentally add bulk. So if you were sewing in an end, I would say not to go over and around your stitches like this, because that can make them thicker. You're trying to get it so that it sits into the into the bumps of the knitting essentially, so that it's not seen, but it also doesn't create any lumps in it. So just to show you that, that's just something I wouldn't recommend doing. Don't go over and around it like you could on other seams. It just creates bulk. And that's really it. You now have your lovely sock, your ends are sewn in and ready to clip off. And now we'll move on to talk about blocking and washing your socks. So you have sewn in your ends and you have a perfect sock. There's just a couple more things I would talk about in looking after your socks now that you've finished them. The first is blocking. With blocking is kind of optional. Socks are made with a negative ease, so they're designed to fit tightly. So be careful not to overblock them if you are blocking them. I don't block mine that are for me. If I'm giving them as gifts or I'm using them as a display for a show, I'll probably run a steam iron over them. Be careful of your iron, because obviously different irons have different settings. It's more of an aesthetic thing than anything else, because actually they can just go straight onto feet, because feet are exactly the right shape for sock blocking. The second thing then is washing your socks. Some of your machine washable socks will say that. So companies like West Yorkshire Spinners or Regia, etc., will all have washing guidelines. I would follow those. I would still recommend maybe hand washing them anyway, but that's just a bit paranoid. I've definitely machine washed most of mine though. With hand-dyed yarns, a lot of them will say to cold hand wash only, and that is to preserve the colour and life of your garment, rather than about the yarn itself being washable. But obviously all yarns vary. Superwash with nylon is very commonly washed, but I would always say knit your socks, and at the end you'll probably have somewhat left over. Knit a small swatch, or good size swatch, or a little mini sock. Put that in your wash,
being careful of any colour fastness, and see how that comes out. And then you'll know if it's machine washable or not. As with all things woolly, don't put them in the tumble dryer. I've done that. They come out sometimes they survive, sometimes they don't. Those are the two things I would say. So blocking and looking after them. The next thing is cast on your second sock now. Second sock syndrome is real. Try to avoid it where possible. It's something I try to avoid by casting on straight away when I finish, but who does that all the time? Just perfect people, and nobody's perfect. That is that one. And then where to next? Well, there's loads of places to go next. I'll put a lot of those into the PDF and you can have a look at those. So that's it really. I'll be back on live with this and any questions you have, and I'll be in the group for the next couple of weeks. I would encourage you to join my main Facebook group, TLYC Knit and Natter, because then there's like, you can ask loads of questions of people who are much better qualified even, to answer them than I am, for sure. Like, there's some amazing knitters of socks in the main group, and everybody's really generous with their knowledge. And after that, well, people have been asking about more tutorials and things, and I think there'll be a lot more news about that shortly in my Knit and Natter group as well. I love teaching. I love knitting. I love teaching knitting, and I can't wait to teach more knitting. So, but thank you so much for joining this. It's my first challenge I've ever run as my first knitting challenge, and I've really enjoyed it. I hope you guys have loved seeing people make socks. I love that we have new sock knitters. That's it. Sky's the limit. Take care. Thank you so much.